So the first question to all three of you is resilience. The word resilience. What does it mean? So I'm going to go to Lud first, as he's had to show resilience of living with Wayne in Edinburgh. He's had to show resilience of moving from Hampshire all the way up to Scotland. How cold was he up there? That means there must be a big temperature difference there. So talk us through resilience, Lud, and then we'll go to Ronnie, and then we'll go to Wayne. Just hand the baton on, so it's not me talking all the time, because I'll be tempted to comment on what you just said. Lud, Ronnie, Wayne.
Well, resilience, where do we start? It's something that I think, you know, when you're a Black individual in this country, you have to have a lot of, because it's challenging. And a lot of people tell me how I feel. And I feel tired. And I feel tired that you constantly are under the cosh. Constantly, people are looking at you and judging you. And it does wear you down. But I've got to say, you know, what you said, Jactar, about, you know, Wayne and yourselves, without you guys, you know, it would have been, you know, I doubt if I would have made it through my time in the fire service. I had you guys to support and lean on when I needed that level of support. You know, I came into Hampshire in 1988. I was the first Black firefighter to join. And again, I was under the cosh. But for me, after having such a difficult time in the RAF, you know, I understood the system, and I understood I couldn't get on in that system, and that's why I had to come out. But coming in the fire service, you know, anything that came my way, I was always going to challenge, and I had challenged that in every way. But, you know, it's, you know, looking at yourself and Wayne, you're still here and you're still pushing on hard. And, you know, I admire that. And what I am a bit concerned about is the fact that we always wanted to hand that baton on to the younger generation to say, you know, you've got to keep that momentum going. Because when we joined the fire service, well, I joined in '88, there was only probably about 240 in the whole country. And most of them were in London. The rest were scattered around the rest of the country. And our own main focus was to try and increase those numbers. And we did what we needed to try and do to make that happen. But to me, the momentum just seems to be have fizzled out, really. I haven't seen anybody with the same sort of drive and passion as you guys are showing now, you know, because I know that.
But Lord, I would disagree. We've got many on this page. Yeah, I won't call them out, but we have got people who are coming up behind us.
We have got some, but I know how much it's cost you, yourself, and Wayne, because at the end of the day, it's like your careers, you know, you put them at risk, you put them on hold to make things change, make the change that we wanted to see. And I wish that I could still see that passion and that drive going through, because you're still here now. You know, you're still here now. You're
okay.
Still leading the charge. You're leading that charge. It should be the next generation leading that charge. You should be taking that back seat now, putting your feet up.
Okay, we take from your comments, resilience is not just yourself and others, and also passing on that resilience to the newcomers. I will be coming, as soon as the questions have been answered, I'm going to come to you, Lud, first, then Wayne, because I know that you prepared short presentations as well. Resilience then, Ronnie, and then Wayne.
Good afternoon, everybody. My resilience came from listening to Mum and Dad as Windrush arrivees in the UK, the struggles that they had. Even in my dad's work at the railway, he'd come home and tell me different things that went on, which ingrained in me that I had to be better and stand up. I joined an East Midlands Fire Service with the first Black firefighter there. I had a hell of a time, but I loved the job. There's so many things I was doing that I really enjoyed. And the resilient, you talk about resilience, we had fires in Black communities, and it was just by chance. I remember listening to one of the fire inspectors saying if they'd only secured the paraffin heater to the wall, we wouldn't have had the fire. I then went out and started telling people in my community. Resilience for me, again, is I loved the job so much, but I hated the people I was working with. I ended up going to Canada and finding the fire service there more open. And I learned a lot of my equality stuff from there. On my journey back, one of the fire chiefs said, we learned a lot from you with your fire safety for our staff, but make sure you take the equality stuff back over to the UK. I'm still currently a firefighter, and every day I do something to support somebody else. You know, we've got new black starters in the job, and I suppose when I started in '81, racism was right in your face. They'd actually say, you're a black so-and-so and I don't want to work with you. I refuse to ride the fire engine with you. Now that racism is covert. And so I'm teaching people to recognize those triggers that people put in place. And I think Lud's exactly right. The emphasis now on recruitment doesn't seem to be there. People are talking the talk, but they're not actually putting things in place. So the likes of Wayne, Jack Tar, they're the ones that keep me going as well, just knowing that they're there. You know?
Keep to the theme of resilience. So I agree with that. So your colleagues and your friend and family keep you going.
Yeah.
Yes, we are going to talk about the issues around recruitment, what the barriers are, how the journey's changed from the 70s, 80s, and now. So Wayne, resilience.
Okay, no problems. I'm not going to attempt to define resilience because we all have our own interpretation of what it means. But what I would like to say is it's not infinitesimal. It's something that's going to run out. It doesn't last forever. So you've got to obviously if you've got it, you've got to make the most of it while you can. And you certainly need it, being a person of color in societies where that is a challenge to the majority. So you do need it, however you define it, however you choose to apply it. Just it's a finite source that needs to be maximized.
Okay, I think we're going to have to make a note of that. Resilience is not a bottomless pit. You can't keep going to it. And I think that resonates with Wayne Brown's presentation last year about carrying the rucksack of equality and diversity on his back all the time. And he just wished that sometimes other people would just take a little bit of the weight off him rather than carrying the rucksack for him. He wasn't asking for the earth, was he? Just saying, just give me a little bit of time and space. Okay, over to you, Lud.
So can we start with Wayne? It's just the way I've organised the slides.
Okay, not a problem. They're up there. There are not many. And I'd like to say it's actually good to be sharing a platform, even though it is a virtual one, with my long-standing friends, because we've known each other for 25, 20, knocking on 30 years, but we have never, as a threesome, share the platform together. We've done it in various combinations, and it's good to have them here with me today. They'll tell you about their own personal journeys. So I'll tell you a little bit about mine, focusing in how I believe that I've made change, some major, some minor, and so on and so forth. But listening to Erica not so long ago, I was going to mention it later on, but this thing about passion, that is something which comes through in abundance in yourself, Erica, and that's the thing that carries an awful lot of people along. I am a not a passionate person at all, and some people might question that, but very quiet, tranquil, nice and steady going. I do not carry that passion, and I'll tell you a story about how that affects me later on. Now, these two that we've got on the stage with you, three different personalities, the three of us, in terms of how we approach dealing with the issues that are facing us. You've got, I believe, young Ronnie, who's the quiet individual who politely knocks on the door and asks to come in Can I help you? And then once he's in there, you can't get him out, you know. I see Lud as the jackhammer that just keeps going and going. He has passion. He keeps coming at you and breaking you down until eventually you do submit. And you see how that passion works, because he's successful in terms of getting himself to a point now where he's you know, county councillor, and Ronnie is now the secretary of the Afro-Caribbean Society. So that passion and that interest carries you through. Me, I'm just a facilitator, so I always put myself down as being, and I'm the person who say, I'll listen to you, I'll learn with you, and I'll help you achieve our needs, because that's what the end game is. As far as the afternoon session goes, this session goes, I'm going to leave the scars alone, because we've all got them. Any one of us who's been in this business has got them. And, you know, just talk about some of the things which I have had the opportunity to be part of, and to wear the T-shirt, which I'm happily wearing today. You can't, I've almost for my entire life been a black man in Britain, not quite all my life, even I had a history before coming to Britain, but being a black person in a society that still doesn't find itself ready to fully accept you has always left us with a challenge, and how we've risen to that challenge is all down to individuals. Me starting to push back started when actually I was about 16 years of age. I ended up going to the Locarno nightclub in Birmingham on one of these Saturday afternoon discos with 4 of my friends from Lordswood Boys Grammar Technical School, the only black one in the group, and the only one who was refused access. And that started because I went home and told my parents, and they were disappointed, and we talked about it. And I ended up writing my own letter to what was then the Race Relations Board in Birmingham. And had an outcome, got a letter from the Locarno nightclub saying, oh, you're quite welcome to come to any of our events anytime you like. And they are still waiting, because I've never been back. About that same time, I became a member of what was then called the Schools Action Union. And I found myself attending meetings at Birmingham University on a Sunday afternoon, sort of toying with communism. I carried my little red school book around me for a little while. And that was a passing phase. It came to an end when I was threatened with arrest while I was picketing at Shenley Court School. And I thought, okay, maybe there's more to this this activism than a passive little individual like me actually liked. Later on, about 1977, there was some civil unrest in Birmingham. It was actually called the Ladywood riots, but in effect, it wasn't in Ladywood, it was actually in Handsworth where we were brought up. It sort of borders onto the ward of Ladywood. But it was, there was a National Front meeting held at my old junior school. And the reaction to that was civil unrest. And so there was lots of rioting going on. And me as a young person with my cousins were just innocent bystanders at that point, until we were suddenly accosted by a transit van pulling up, and a bunch of baton-wielding, foul-mouthed, racist cops jumped out and accused us of something which we actually weren't doing, because if he'd known us or looked at us and see that we weren't dressed for rioting at all. Me and my cousins were known as the very cool boys around town at the time. So we weren't dressed for rioting. But as a consequence of that, that assault on our integrity, we did go home, we did get changed, and we did become part of our only foray into physical anarchy that I can remember. I don't think I've ever done it again. Bit of a risk for us because, well, a bit of a risk for me, because I was already a civil servant working for the local government, and I'd also been accepted to join the fire service. So taking a chance, but it certainly at the time, it was warranted. It certainly the idea that you know, you had the police force which was there to protect all of this community, and we, as I said, as innocent bystanders, certainly weren't part of it, and they weren't prepared to give us a chance to find out what it's all about. So that was that. As a new recruit, can I have the first slide up, please? Then Here you go. As a new recruit to the West Midlands Fire Service, there are 2 black faces in there. I think it's still the custom. These recruit course photographs were taken at the end of the course as opposed to the beginning. And so me and my best friend at the time, Carl, who stood up the other end, we took the decision to join the fire service at the same time, but he got processed earlier than I did, so I started training before I joined. And 2 things about that. He turned up. At this point, Coventry Training Centre had only just been, so we were the very first courses to go through Coventry Training Centre as opposed to other centres. So we're now away from Birmingham, away from our centre. So he turns up as the first black recruit at the centre, only to be told that, you know, he was going to have the nickname of Chalky, which was very common in those days. So Chalky it was. I came along, next course along, and it's proud that one of the instructors is proud to announce that we've already got our black firefighter, and his name is Chalky. And so we're going to call you Cheesy. And I sort of sat back and I said, I prefer it if you didn't. And he didn't after that. He didn't have the answer. He didn't know where to put himself. And so that was the end of that. The sad thing about it is, unfortunately, we're all different characters. And that nickname Chalky stuck with him for the first 6 or 7 years of his service until he too had to stand up and say, nah, this has got to stop. But the other thing that happened with us so the reason why we're together at the end of course photographs, because we weren't on the same course, is we were a residential course, went out as a group of people, a group of young firefighters, obviously looking like squaddies because everybody's well clean cut. And we got involved in what could only be classed as an attack in the Dog and Trumpet Public House in the centre of Coventry. And that's when we found out where we stood, because 2 individuals, 2 black out of about 8 or 9 people, and we were the people subject to attack, and we were the people who were left fighting for our lives, where everybody had dispersed and disappeared. And unfortunately for my good friend Carl, he ended up with a night injury. And so as a consequence, got back course and we finished our training together. Several years after that, I first encountered my twin brother, Jack Dar, and we as people of colour at the time were in some ways quite unique, because we were, first of all, people of colour in the West Midlands Fire Service, but we were also better educated than the average firefighter at that time. It was the start of the process where people who studied to A level, who studied to degrees, just weren't there at that time. So as individuals with good, solid educational background and ambition, we certainly stood out. And I can remember us having a conversation while sat on the back of a personnel carrier in Birmingham Central's yard, waiting for our recruits who have been trained in BA, and having the conversation, and Jack asking, well, how far do you think they'll let us go? And I said, well, I think they'll give us a white shirt, but nothing more. 2 years later, we were back together again, Jack and I, both sporting our very crisp white shirts. And we then spent 3 years working together. And we were not only wearing the white shirts, we were wearing the T-shirts, the tracksuits, national dress, costumes, and anything else that was necessary to do the job that we were doing. Because we were involved in racing, fire safety awareness, as well as improving the view of the fire service of the community that we serve. And I'm not blowing our own trumpet, but I honestly believe you could use all the objective measures that you like. In the 3 years together, Jack Dar and I had the biggest impact on community fire safety and community relations with the fire service in those 3 years. So, it's a catalogue of the things in which we, as a pair of officers, achieved in those 3 years, and those things were phenomenal things in terms of actually outcomes. So, from having ourselves the community fire safety bus and being on TV, being in the radio, community camps, full schools program, every single junior school in the inner city Birmingham and Dudley and Coventry and West Bromwich had a visit from Jack Dar and myself in the time that we were there, and many of them 2 visits. College mentoring, industrial tutors, it just goes on and on, as well as doing the stuff that we now know, the positive action stuff, actually getting involved in writing the equal opportunities policy. And I walked away from there, don't know what Jack Dyer counted this for, but 266 hours of unpaid work, which I put on the table because we walked away after those 3 years and with nothing to show for it. Okay, Jack and I then came together for a third time when we both ended up seconded to the Fire Service College. And I believe the commandant of the college at the time was fairly uncomfortable having the two of us there, because he called us in for a little chat. And he had this story about, I believe it was either his son or grandson going to a carnival and being frightened by a black woman who's taking part in the carnival and so on. But it really was a clumsy story which left us thinking, well, he sees us all as being very scary. And then also, if he or his family react in a strange way, it's not because they're racist, they're just scared of us. So, that was certainly the feel at the time at the college. But needless to say, I became part of the Equal Opportunities Working Party and went on to help develop the college policy. Moved to London then, gave me another opportunity to wear another T-shirt, because I was now in a force where there was a visible minority of black people around London Fire Brigade. And I started to compile a list of individuals who had come across in my duties as a fire officer. And then after all, I was confident enough after about 9 months or so to send out a newsletter to those people I encountered. And this was the first time I actually encountered the Koala and Parvinder, who subsequently became your founding members for AFSA, because we were all working together over the east side of London. Sent the newsletter out, got one response, and it's quite strange because he was always the top of the list. As Brian Amos, he responded. And as a consequence, he became part of, I don't say as a consequence, but he was there, become part of the BEAM National Committee some years later. But not deterred by the lack of interest, I wanted to press on. And I can remember making a phone call to my area commander, the ACO, just telling him what I was doing and what I was proposing to do, and the fact I wanted to use brigade resources to do it. And Mr. Overton says, Wayne, hang on there, let me give it a little bit of time to think about it. I'll get back to you. 30 years later, I'm still waiting to hear from Mr. Overton, but we'll see. And about that time, I also encountered one of my fellow officers of colour, and to talk to him about what the possibilities were. And, you know, because I had this vision that we'd be together, we'd push this thing on together, and so on. But his response was, nah. Equality, Wayne, is a CLM. I said, CLM? Well, what's that? He said, it's a career limiting move. You know, so you know, he had all the buzzwords. So from then on, I knew that it wasn't always going to be plain sailing, because we all share the same difference, because we're people of colour. Certainly do not mean we share the same interests or mindsets or aspirations or ways and means of doing things. So that was that. So right about now, we're now in the mid to early 90s. There was an incident which occurred in the west of London Fire Brigade, over Hammersmith side, where a station officer, who was now be Watch Manager B, was heard to say, you know, he'd sent a spade to fetch a spade, because a firefighter had been asked to go and get a shovel to do some turning over. And so he had made that phrase, and it was overheard, and it caused a stir, and as it should. And then you had the situation where a number of the black firefighters on the west side of London were quite happy to go out there and teach him a lesson as to, you know, to moderate his understanding and his language. But because of the list that I'd complied and sent out, they sort of contacted me and said, well, can you come and talk with us? And we went through this process of, we met in a pub over in Ladbroke Grove, and then we had a second meeting at a pub in Southwark, just talking about, well, what is the right way to do this? And it didn't take long for those two meetings to come to the notice of the Fire Brigades Union. And out went this letter inviting you, saying, well, we've heard that you've been meeting, would you like to come along and meet more formally, and we'll facilitate it. push comes to shove, we end up being invited to Wortley Hall, 1995, for that very first meeting of what would become the Black and Ethnic Minority section of the fire service. 95 came together, lots of passion, Erica. It was all there, the individuals who wanted to tell their story, and they were given the forum which to do it. Got some sort of reassurances. Yeah, we're listening. We're going to do something about that. Come back 12 months later, absolutely nothing. So it's now anger. It's gone from this outpouring to this feeling of anger towards us. But by the end of that weekend, we've taken the decision that those individuals there in front of you on the screen were elected as a steering committee, which was going to bring about this first national support network for Black and ethnic minority members. You can see straight away there was the absence of any women there, but one of the very first decisions that we took as a steering committee is that there will always be a place for a Black woman on that committee, and they try their best to stick to that from there on. So with that sort of contribution, we organised and ran our very first BEAM school in 1997. This was one of those situations where it was by us, for us. And I've always put it down as the most defining moment in my fire service career was that weekend. So we put together a program where both engaging, challenging, inspiring, and the infamous walking talk, which became part of the process. And then that incredibly emotional Sunday morning where we sat, we talked, and we cried. And it was, as I say, almost a seminal moment for myself in terms of the Fire Brigade Union. Moving on a little bit, it's only in time of this is all happening mid-90s. The first thematic review of the fire service with regards to equality, HMI were doing this, and I was nominated to be the coordinator for the London Fire Brigade in terms of planning the thematic and had the officers come in. As part of that process, I interacted, and that got an invite to join the inspecting team, and I still to this day don't know why. I came up with some spurious excuse to say no. That next point, which is about the thematic, once the report was written, myself, Jagtar, and Danny Cotton, as it was at the time, were invited to present on that day. And the point that Jagtar's raising there is I chose on that occasion to be challenging. I'd said that, this is a point where we draw a line in the sand and we go no further. And I threatened to name names because I knew in that group of people was at least a couple of individuals who had either kicked my door when I was on, course at Fire Service College, or had let me know in no uncertain terms what they thought about Black people in the service. So, but we pull back, let them know that Jagtar says that we need to be a little bit more reasonable and give them one more chance. And that too was a stirring moment because I got so many contacts from I've never been spoken to more often by a principal officer than that day, because you see one praising you, then raising the expectations and all the rest of it. So that was then. Yeah, just to finish off, because we then went on to do a lot of talks. Every CFRO event after that on equality was there was an invite to do the talk. And unfortunately, that's the point when those scars that I said I would avoid, they came through, because I got tired of telling the story. And this is why I don't want Jagtar to give me another hour, because this will probably be the last time that I will talk about these things, because it takes its toll, eventually. So the net result of doing all those talks in the early 2000s was this lack of, influence. It gave individuals a chance to rent their clothing and to self-flagellate. And there was no account of what impact it was having on me. It had an incredible impact in terms of lack of confidence and so on and so forth. So what went on in Scotland is what went on in Scotland. What I do want to say is that this thing about the passion, you do need to, if you're going to be the person that's getting there and afford change, you know, it's great being the facilitator. It's great being the person to say, let me hold your hand, let me do the writing, all the rest of it. But the people that actually make the world go around are those people who stand up and tell it from the heart and tell it like it really is. And so once again, I'm following Erica. Over my career, I followed Carl St. Paul so many times, and he, the person stood in front of me in that photograph, was also a person of passion. And it's extremely challenging to follow somebody who talks from the heart when you're trying to talk from the head. So thank you very much. Over to you, lad.
Okay, thanks. How do you follow that?
Easy by me.
Yeah, it's been a real sort of honor to you know, be in this service with people, you know, like Wayne, Jack Tar, and he said as well as Carl, because I've had people I can really look up to, but not only I can look up to, I can always call upon them for my support. And these guys have really supported me out throughout my career. So as soon as they know me, they supported me. I grew up in London in the 70s, and that's when, you know, it was hard times. You know, we had obviously the police, but we also had the far right to deal with as well. The first time I was really exposed to racism when I was only young, but my brother, he was really talented, and what you had to do is, in those days, the top 10 of every junior school, when they did the 11+ exam, were allowed to go to the local grammar school. And my brother, he came third, and he got an invitation to go to the grammar school. And they went down there, but then when they saw he was black, they got a letter to say, oh, sorry, you're not really wanted. But that was the first time I saw my mum in full flight. She went down there, guns blazing, and she challenged them. And they did everything to stop him. But then my mum, you know, she realized, she said, why do I want to send my son to a place where he's not wanted? She says, I'll find him a school where they want him and they can appreciate his talents. So that's where he went on, and he went to a different school, and he did well. And we all followed him to that school. But that was the first time I was really exposed to it, and I saw the fire, the passion my mum had, and you know, I wanted to go along those lines. But I was part of the Air Cadets, and when I was in the Air Cadets, I was a role model by default, because I was like the first black person to join the Air Cadets in my area in Brockley. And then soon as a few black kids went past, they saw one black kid in there, one came in, then another one. And then before you knew it, we had like sort of like 8, 9 kids, and it was great. So, you know, I didn't even know what the concept was, but just by me being there made that difference. Anyway, I enjoyed that, and I wanted to get out of the environment in London because it was too toxic and I was getting stopped too many times, and I joined the RAF. When I joined the RAF, that's what I found out what real racism was about, because the system was against people of color. You know, we didn't get no opportunities, we didn't get no promotion, we didn't get any of the luxuries that was afforded to some of our white colleagues. And one of the situations I used to tell a lot of the people, our station, which I was assigned to, we were close to the Queen's flight. And one of the things was wherever the Queen goes with the helicopters, they have to take all the crews with them. And we had to detach somebody there every single month. Every single time it came to my turn, whoop, the next person, whoop, the next person. These guys went 8, 9, 10 times, and I never went once. And I went to one of my friends, I said, how come? And they said, no black people go on Queen's flight. You're not going to get those, you know, you're double money, you get new uniform, you get first class travel. You're not going to get that. So we didn't get it. So, you know, I was upset about that. But what really upset a lot of black people, and that's the reason a lot of them left, was a lot of them was coming into the RAF with expectations, high focus, you know. And, you know, one of the guys, you know, none of us got any promotion. And Guy Ham, he did one of these courses where it was dual trade. Because when you're in the RAF, if a squadron has to go anywhere, like Germany detached to Cyprus, whatever, the whole squadron has to go. But if somebody goes down, say you've got a motor mechanic and he's gone sick long term, you have to bring someone all the way from England to replace that person. So they did what they call was dual trades, where you do 2 trades, and then after you do the 2 trades, you get your tapes. Well, he did his dual trade, a motor mechanic and a radio operator. And he was laughing at us saying, "No, I'm going to get my promotion and I'm going to be the first one." And when it came up to 5 years, we're like, "Where's your tapes?" "Oh, they said, I can get the money. It's technical, blah, blah, blah." 6 years. I said, "Where's your tapes?" So he bought himself out. He couldn't handle the fact that, this was what he signed up to do, and they let him down. And it's like me, I understood that I wasn't going to get anywhere. So I made sure I got out. So when I joined Hampshire, I was the first black firefighter. I went to Basingstoke, and it was good. I enjoyed Basingstoke. Really, I really enjoyed it. I was on Red Watch. I enjoyed my time there. But a job came up in Andover, and the sub at the time, he was pestering me. He said, "You've got to go for it. It's double money. It's day crewing. You get a fire brigade house, this, that." And I was like, got to go for it. At the end of the day, you get in a job where you're going to get double the money. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I was thinking, what's wrong with this? I've got to go for it. But what I didn't realize, and what a lot of people don't realize, is that white privilege. As a white individual, you don't have to worry about where you go. But as a black individual, you need to look and research at the area. And I didn't do any research, but there was only 3 black families in the whole of Andover. And when I went, fire brigade, I always remember my station officer came up, said, "Right, this is your house. Here's your pager. You've got 5 minutes. When it goes off, get down the road, get in the station." I said, "Great." So there's me living in the house, both neighbors not talking to me, both neighbors move away, gone. People, the thing which really affected me more than anything, it wasn't so much the people who were like looking at me and, and just, "Oh, what's this guy doing here?" It was my my eldest daughter was suffering at school. And that was really pushing me close to the point of just jacking it and going back, because I was thinking, even with the extra money, I can't deal with this, my family. But things changed and we moved on. And then obviously I had a few issues in the service, but again, I had the support. I had that support network around me, the people who I could go to, the people who I can call upon, and they supported me all the way through. Then obviously I went up to Lothian and Borders with Wayne, and that for me was a real eye-opener, because I think that was the first time in my career I was really appreciated for what I could bring to the service. And what I brought to that service was, with the help of Wayne and others in that service, we increased the number of ethnic minorities substantially, And the year I went up in I think 2007, and in that year we were only recruiting 32 firefighters. We got 5 ethnic minorities. And then Strathclyde, the biggest brigade in Scotland, they recruited 100. They didn't get any. And that was because of the work that we did. And I was so proud of that fact. But the thing which really I was proud about was that we took along the workforce with us, with us going, talking to the watches, explaining how and why we're doing this positive action. That was really, we brought the whole workforce with us, because, when I first got up there and I was saying, right, we've got to do open day for women and ethnic minorities, and we've got to go on to MacDonald Road because that's where they've got all the testings and everything else. And one of my colleagues says, "Oh, we can't go on such and such. That's Blue Watch on. They're really anti." And I said, "Well, let's get down to Blue Watch. Let's have the discussion." So that's what we did. So we went down there, we had the discussion, and we were going to put a women's only day on. And one of the guys was, "Oh, why are they getting all this?" And anyway, we had the discussion, and after the discussion, they came round. But when we had the day, we did the positive action day. After, the same guy who had all the issues and problems, he came up to me and he says, "That was very rewarding." He says, "I really was against positive action." He says, "But when you showed that all it is showing them what the job entails showing them the standard they need to be, because obviously women, you know, you had to do the bleep test. I don't know if they still do it now. And obviously that's more difficult as a female, because naturally a man can do 9 points. You've got to get to that level. So, you know, so when that guy came up to me, I thought, you know, this is what it's all about, bringing the workforce along with you. The other thing which I'll briefly touch on, I mean, one of the things which Carl always said to me, and I did feel in a lot of ways, especially when I went to Andover, not so much when I went to Basingstoke, that as a Black firefighter, I didn't really feel that I fitted in because of my beliefs, my actions, and some of the things which I truly believed in. I felt like I was a guest in the room. Even though I was part of the system, even though I was working in the system, I felt as a guest. And, you know, I mean, one of the things which, you know, I'll show is in 1992, just coming on next year, it'll be 30 years since I did the Gladiators. And when I got in, I got accepted. You know, I was so happy. I went to the station, all the guys, I said, look, they're giving me 200 tickets. You've got to get down there. Not one. I didn't take one person with me. And I was so upset. And I was thinking, this is going to be huge. It's going to be on national TV. You guys have got to come. The only guy who was going to come was Simon, but Simon couldn't get any a leave pass from his wife because she was due to have the baby any day. And she said, you're not going anywhere. So Simon couldn't go. But I was really disappointed because all I did was when I went up to Birmingham, because you had to go up to Birmingham, I just went to the local station, which was Ladywood. I said, so here's all the tickets. I said, just give them to the brigade. I said, anyone wants to go, they can go. And, you know, and I was a bit disappointed about that. But when it came on TV, that's when they all suffered, because everybody was like, why did you go? You know, and that was the question, the big question I asked them. But moving on, you know, 2017, I did want to do Ninja Warriors, but then I thought, you know what, I can't. I've got nothing to lose. Anyway, I was the oldest one on the competition, and I got selected. But for me, you know, when they contacted me and says, "Oh, you're on the show, blah blah blah," you can have 2 or 3 tickets, and I'm like, "Are you mad?" I says, "I've got 4 generations of Ramseys coming." I said, I've got my dad all the way down to my grandkids. I says, how the hell am I going to tell them not to go? And I said, and I've got all my friends. In fact, I says, oh, you've got to give me more. Anyway, it gradually crept up. And then I got 10, then 15. And they said, oh, few people. On the day, I took actually 27. But when I do any talks, because I've been, you know, what I've been doing this for the last 3 years, I've been doing Black History talks for schools about Black history and the importance. But when I go, I always show them this picture, because I said, a lot of people talk about diversity. A lot of people, you know, talk. I said, this shows that these are my friends. These are the people who are close to me. And I've got everybody. I've got old, young, fat, thin, people, you know, I've got everybody in that picture. And then everybody in that picture, they took the time to come down, and I really felt proud. Because most of the people, again, I came in with an army, and that was really inspiring for me. The last thing I want to talk about is obviously, you know, everybody has gone different paths. Me, I landed in Chesterfield, and when I got to Chesterfield, you know, I was retired, and I was thinking I'm just going to put my feet up and relax. But there's still, as Jack Tar, Wayne, and everybody's still a lot of work to be done. I didn't realize that Chesterfield, you know, until I joined the Afro-Caribbean Association, I didn't realize that we never had a Black firefighter in Chesterfield. And I felt really angry about that. Since the FEMAC review has been since 1999, I'm thinking, why the hell, how does this happen here? So I made a conscious decision. I said, you know what, I'm going to get in and try and make things, the change that needs to happen. So I got involved with the Labour Party, and to be honest, this one of the first times in my life as a Black individual, I've been, you know, as soon as I joined the Labour Party, started to, you know, do a few bits and pieces.
Look, Lud, shall we do your political story and life after the fire service another day? Because we'd run out of time. Okay. But give us an elevator pitch to the finish, but we must see the video.
Okay, well, I'll put the video on now, and then you can watch the video. Ninja Warriors. Okay. But remind you, I was the oldest one there. Okay, here we go.
Lud Ramsey, a retired firefighter. He's from Andover. Lud's onto TikTok. He's got that pendulum moving. There's a nice amount of swing there.
Just got to move around it.
Easy. See how much swing he got there, Cammy.
He's used to going down that fireman's pole, though, isn't he?
Absolutely right.
This guy is seriously fit. Spinning bridge will be no problem.
That was freezing.
So good till then.
Yes, that was freezing. That water was absolutely freezing. But it was a good day. It was a very good day. Okay, I'll hand over to Ronnie now.
Yeah, let's hand over to Ronnie. I've got a few comments to make on yours and Wayne's, but let's get to Ronnie first because Ronnie deserves this. Ronnie is the driver of the big cars. Come on, Ronnie.
What do you want me to talk about today?
So, should we have the, as we planned it, conversation? So, Ronnie, tell us a little bit about your background and history, and then we'll move on to your proudest achievements, and then we'll move on to your top tips. And
Okay.
we'll hold you back, your full story. We'll hold back for another day. So, first of all, tell us a bit about yourself, because many people on this page will not know you.
Okay, so I was the first black firefighter in Derbyshire. As I said earlier, had lots of issues. And again, Wayne picked up on a point. I was more intelligent than some of the staff I was working with. They actually put me with at training center, they put me with the worst person that couldn't do any of the knots or lines or couldn't do his work. I automatically helped him because I knew if I didn't, we were both going to get kicked out. At the end of my course, I think it was 33 people on the course and I was 8th. This person was dead last, but they automatically, when we were doing things, always put me with him. And it took me years to realize how they tried to undermine you going through the fire service. And obviously this is 1981. But then, as I said earlier, I moved to Canada. I learned a lot in Canada. I brought that back with me to the UK. Little things such as I ended up working in Essex and I challenged the chief around equality. He actually listened to me and he made his equality officer answerable directly to him. Now that was quite interesting because most equality officers have to work within HR functions. As negative as some of the people were in Essex, when they realized that the equality officer was answerable directly to the chief, they started coming to her with questions and getting guidance because obviously she's sitting in senior management meetings and they're asking her, what should we be doing? So it actually worked. Unfortunately, things change, chiefs change, and the direction of the service changed. So I moved on. I moved up to Leicester, and one of my best achievements, I believe, is encouraging 4 mixed race women to join Leicester Fire and Rescue Service. So one of my biggest things, I like to have a little jab at some of my London colleagues. Yes, they've got 6,000 firefighters, but Leicester's only got 400. So percentagely, we've got more black female firefighters operational than London. And it sort of irks them a little bit, but it shows that when you have a genuine desire to diversify the face of your fire service, you can actually do it if you have the buy-in from your senior management team. And that's one of the things that I still strive, so much so that I try to help other brigades. I think I'm in the next little while.
So to keep the conversation going, top tip number 1, you need top leadership support.
Yes.
And you need to engage with that top leadership. And one that I think Wayne would say is when we were with Beam, we used to go and see the chief for a meeting. I hope there's no very senior officers here because they're going to let a secret out of the bag now. In the early days, when we used to go to the senior officers meeting as black firefighters, he used to get his PA in to do the notes. And we found 3 months later, 6 months later, those notes meant nothing. They were meaningless. So we agreed that we would do the notes. My God, did things change? Because we wrote things as they were. We wrote the actions that the chief promised, and that was a really powerful way of getting leadership buy-in and owning the actions yourself. Ronnie, give us a second tip of how to achieve on this agenda as an experienced black firefighter.
You definitely need to bring your operational crews on board with you, just like Lud was saying, going talking to them. I mean, right now, that's what we're doing in Leicester. I have one of my other colleagues, he's going around giving equality talks from the grassroots. It's amazing how well he's brought people on board. We're now trying to do the same thing with the middle managers. So definitely getting your station personnel on board. You can then start doing your positive action. You can then start doing your outreach work. And for me, it's shown by example. So for argument's sake, we go to Tesco's to buy some food for lunch. I get off the truck and I start talking to people, especially people of color and women.
Okay, that's brilliant. So that's another top tip, tying up with what we've been hearing today.
Yes.
Positive action alone won't work, because if that brings in people that are diverse, unless the watch culture, station culture, HR culture, team culture is accepting that group of people, knows why you're doing it, you will fail. Give us another one.
Again, in non-operational roles, you have to get them on board as well. Again, I think maybe Erica hit on it. People try to be the same, but you actually want to encourage people and empower people to be their natural selves. That way, people will see the difference in you, you know?
Yep. So be your authentic self. Do not try to fit in, because if you try to fit in, you will fail and you'll be doing disrespect for others who have to follow behind you. Okay. Tell us about your great achievements. Ronnie, you've taken the trade union with you on this, and sometimes the battles you've had have been both with the with management and with the trade union. So what lessons would you say are the benefits of working both with management and with trade union?
Again, it's diversification. In the trade union, yes, the trade union did support being members right at the very beginning, but things change. Dynamics within the unions change, and it is about standing up and having those difficult conversations. We don't need to be thumping the desks, you know, but we need to be resolute and give them better direction so that they can understand the issues from a different point of view. I've worked in the fire service for 41 years now, and I've seen every different change that management bring in. I've also seen the way the union has tried to negate some of those things, but by getting involved, which is what I encourage some of our young minorities to get involved into the union and getting, you know, they will give a new.
Yeah, that's excellent. Ronnie, you alluded to something there, and I want to just dig a bit deeper on that one. What are the characteristics of the good leaders that have helped you on your journey?
Listening. If there's anything, as firefighters, we've been trained, and I have to use the word designed, to react to a certain situation. And it's taken me a long time to realize that you have to listen. You have to listen and give constructive feedback or give constructive support, or sometimes just listen.
Okay, Ronnie, that's really excellent. So I'm going to give you the first opportunity of everybody here to give us feedback on today, your reflections, your 3 lessons learned, and then I'll invite others to come in and just unmute. If you put your hands up, it might help me in the earlier stages, and then later on, I think people will start to leave because they'll have their. This is the awful thing about online conferences and events. What happens is we schedule a meeting 10 o'clock till 3:30, and then other people have filled your diaries from 3:30 to 4:30. There's no electronic breaks in between. So I apologize for that. But there was no way we were going to try and get this just finished just because we set a certain time. We know that certain individuals would be able to stay a bit longer. Others have got commitments which they've had no choice but to leave because of that. So lessons learned, and how do we take this conversation forward?
Okay, lessons learned. Resilience. I didn't realize how resilient I was until listening to what Erica was saying. And it triggered me to think back to what set me off, which was my dad. Reflection. We've had lots of conversations today, and all of those little bits, admittedly I wasn't here at the very beginning, but all of those little bits come back to you and confirm what you're doing is the right thing. Camaraderie. It's great to see some of the old faces that I recognize and to see some new faces that are taking on the mantle. So camaraderie, you know, if there's a day that somebody's down, pick up the phone. I'm quite happy to do that. I mean, Jack and myself, we spend hours on the phone when we're driving or whatever, just getting that little bit of strength from somebody else that's been through it. So camaraderie definitely is something that I would give my 3 things.
I think that's a good lesson. Colleagues, you're not on your own. You will find yourself in dark places. Our mobile numbers are on the WhatsApp pages that you belong to. You can always contact us. If we haven't got our mobile numbers, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to someone. Do not suffer in silence. That's Ronnie's wise words. Anybody want to come in as a summary of those key points? I've got Simon, who just put a really amazing comment in. Simon, would you like to unmute and just repeat that or add to it?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is empowerment. I've gleaned so much from everyone's story that I can add to my story, and that will help empower me going forward and to pay it forward to others. So that's one thing I've learned. I've also learned that the conversation hasn't stopped. I've never realized how many different conversations are being had throughout the country, and I really appreciate that, because I didn't know. To me, I didn't know that British Black and brown people actually spoke about it. It's so much highlighted in America, and it seemed to be radio silence here, and this just takes the shell away from my eyes to make me realize it is being spoken about. There is a community, and the conversations are being had, and things are wanting to change, and the momentum is there. So I have learned that today. And one thing I want to change after today is go back to my own company and continue those conversations, make Black History Month not just in October or February, but have those conversations throughout the year. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you so much I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you great people, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Erica, it's what you just reminded me of AFSA and the laziness that we sometimes see, well, others see us as Asian only, and that bit about having these conversations in other times. We've held, during LGBT week, we don't talk about that, do we, as Black people? We've held sessions about LGBT. Under disabilities, we've looked at these issues. Mental health, we've looked at these issues. Mm-hmm. So we will take that on board, Erica, to say, when else can we have these conversations? But let's make sure Black History Month is about achievement, about celebration. The rest of the year, let's point out those inequalities, those parity gaps that exist that we need to change.
To sum up, it's been a really powerful, inspiring day, and thank you all the speakers that have been on and told us your stories. Very powerful, very interesting. Today's made me laugh, and it has actually made me cry, because it made me realise things about people, about how strong they've had to be, and that perhaps over time some of us haven't been there for them as much as we should have been. It's been a great way of celebrating people's achievement, and certainly the fire service is in many ways a much improved and better place than last time I worked there, which was in 2002. And you said, can we commit to doing something like this every year? Well, I can gaily say that because I certainly don't intend still to be working 10 years time, but I think we should do this, and however the best way pans out. I mean, it would have been lovely to see you all in person.
Valerie just my sense of humour, that's all.
Yes.
Dalroy knows that.
So anyway, it would have been lovely to see you all in person, but today, quite frankly, the roads probably would have been closed down here because it's been torrential rain. So maybe it was a good way after all. And I guess finally, I can't wait to catch up with you all at the conference in November. And thank you everybody for all the hard work you've done in putting it together and for the time given by all our speakers. So thank you all of you.